Hey everybody, it's Shizug and welcome back to this meta update. We're looking at the new changes from the November 8th patch. We're going to be looking at the big picture changes of the miscellaneous gameplay updates that are going to affect each and every game that you play, and we're going to be breaking them down and how it affects the metagame moving forward. Alright, let's get into the first notes. Troopers no longer change soul sharing rules after laning phase ends. So the soaking mechanics that we're used to in lane, where if there's two people around, they both get the full value of a last hit that happens in front of them, whether they're the one that gets the last hit or not, that is going to be retained past the 8-minute marker now. Before, this used to end at 8 minutes, and it used to be bad to have more than one person on a lane if you're trying to maximize farm for an individual, but now the ideal number of players that you want around a wave is 2. To maximize efficiency now, it's ideal to have 2 heroes next to a wave as it dies. When we had double soaking in the past, where we have a video on that if you want to learn more about this mechanic, this is going to be retained throughout the game, so trying to get into lanes with multiple people 2 at a time is the optimal way to try to farm waves. Now, I'm not saying that you should entirely not push a wave on your own. I think you still need to push waves on your own as a solo player, but give it some thought if there's some instances where there's someone farming a camp next to you, maybe hop on the mic and say, hey, do you want to hit this wave with me? Because otherwise they're just going to be entirely missing out on souls that they could get for free, essentially. And then additionally, baked onto this change, around that 8-minute timer that we were talking about where the soul sharing changes, we have troopers no longer increase their bounty by 20% at 8 minutes. This is also going that line of thinking of the troopers' bounty in the laning phase versus after the laning phase. They've wanted to eliminate that and make it consistent throughout the game, which I think is a good change, and I welcome it. I think this is good to keep it consistent throughout the entire game and not have to know these weird timings. Also, if you didn't know, every single time there's a major patch for Deadlock, I actually go live on both Twitch and YouTube on every other Thursday for when the large patch notes come out. In these patch reviews, we go through every single line by line, and break it down. And you can sub on YouTube and give a follow on Twitch, so that way you'll catch it live next time it happens on a Thursday. Alright, moving on to the next patch note. Additionally, neutral creeps now give 5% less souls as well. So this kind of AFK mode farm mentality that a lot of people have, it's not going to be as efficient to entirely solo split push waves and then hit neutral creeps in between. They're de-incentivizing that a little bit. And through that loss of net worth in troopers and neutral creeps, we're actually making up for it with this next patch note. Hero kill gold has been increased from 150, scaling up to 1,400, to instead 175, scaling up to 2,000. And then that scale time is going from 0 to 45 minutes. So what this means is that on average, throughout the entire game, hero kills are going to be worth more than they used to. So although we've lost some souls from lane troopers and neutral creeps, they're making it up by incentivizing kills a little bit more, especially as the game goes on. Next, we have some changes to the Guardians. The first thing is that troopers will now take 28% more damage from Guardians, and I think this is Valve kind of saying, we don't really want the NPCs to kill the other NPCs, we want them to be objectives for heroes to take, and I welcome that. I think it's smart to let the heroes be the driving damage when it comes to taking Guardians, but not nullifying it entirely. And additionally, this also is going to impact how tower diving works as well. Note that Valve didn't decrease the amount of damage that troopers are doing to the Guardians, it's increasing the amount of damage that Guardians are doing to the troopers. So what this means is that the waves that get to the tower are going to die more quickly, which is going to give less of a window to dive the actual Guardian itself. Next, we have that Guardians will now focus their attack on enemy players if an enemy player shoots a hero and the enemy player is within 15 meters of the Guardian. So this is a massive change to how the laning dynamic will work out now. Before, Guardians used to simply aggro on the closest person to them. They used to not have some complex target finding of who's doing the most damage or anything like that. It was just, oh, there's a trooper that's closest to me, I'm going to hit that. A hero walked into range that's closer than the trooper, I'm going to hit the hero instead. They walk out. If the hero is no longer the closest person, then it would go back to hitting a trooper or something like that. So it was whatever was closest is how the Guardian worked before. But now what it's going to do is if you shoot a player, it's going to automatically target you if you're within 15 meters. So it will take precedence over the troopers in front of you, and it will absolutely go and attack you first and foremost. From my rough testing, if you shoot one bullet at a hero within that 15-meter radius, it will aggro you for 3 seconds and not drop the aggro unless you shoot another bullet, and then it will reset that timer. Additionally, it's good to note that Guardians still collide, like their laser beam is still going to collide with troopers, so you can still use troopers to shield yourself from that aggro, but if you're not playing around troopers, it's still you're gonna take the full force from the Guardians. So the way that we've been seeing people dive towers is typically you dash jump directly on top of the Guardian and you parry, assuming the Guardian is going to melee you. And then while it's not attacking, you had a chance to kind of get back out of the aggro range. You were not the closest person anymore, and then it would re-aggro your troopers while you were on the other side of the tower. You were essentially able to get past the Guardian and onto the other side without taking significant damage. But now, if you're shooting the hero on the other side, the Guardian will take aggro on you and it will shoot you down. It's a big nerf to diving towers. We also have some map changes. So the corner camps, the what I would call loser camps in the past in some of my old videos, they've now been moved out of the corners and a little bit more central into the map. And you see the B-roll in the background. They've kind of moved next to the walkers and onto the roofs and instead of in those back corners. This is going to make these neutral camps a little bit more impactful for you to be able to gank in the first place. It's also going to mean that there's smoother rotations to the center of the map from these. I feel like farming those, I called them loser camps because I feel like if you were farming those edge outer camps, you were likely losing the game. And I think that moving them a little bit more centralized is going to allow you to have more impact on the map while still farming up neutrals. Another map change is that cosmic veils have been added to the ground floor entrances of the mid-boss room that grant vision looking in, but block vision looking out. This makes it a lot more risky to take mid-boss now. I think a lot of the times people like support-esque players would position themselves on the outside stairs to be able to see up the alleyway towards the secret shops. And now you don't have that line of sight anymore. It's a lot more unsure of if you're getting ganked within the mid-boss pit. So players are going to have to put themselves more at risk by being beyond the veils if they want to scout for stealers and stuff like that. And it's going to make it a lot more risky to take mid-boss with the other team alive. I think it's really, they're trying to make it so if you win a fight, you can take mid more easily, but it's really risky to do it with other players up still. Also, in a lot of games I've been spectating, I've been seeing a lot of Veil Walkers picked up, I think because of these changes as well. Veil Walker got a couple buffs, but having a bunch of extra new Veils in the center of the map that are easily between points that you're rotating around and ganking with, I think is a really big benefit to the item, and people are picking up the item more because of it. The mid-boss Rejuv trooper health has been increased by 30%. So this means when you get that buff from killing mid-boss, your troopers become stronger. It's now going to increase their health by 30% even more on top of what it was already giving. These new mid-boss troopers, these super troopers, are really difficult to deal with. I actually feel like it was a huge detriment on my game and immediately noticeable to have those troopers be more healthy. If you don't have something like a ricochet or a spell that can AoE clear something, you really do feel the impact of the troopers coming into your base now. I think it's going to make it a lot more easy to push with these troopers being even stronger after taking mid-boss. And additionally, talking about pushing, Walker's armor loss over time now happens at 16 minutes instead of 14 minutes. What we saw in the last patch is the same way that Guardians take more damage as the game goes on. Walkers got the same treatment, but the number was a little bit tuned too early, and now they want the walkers to be dying a little bit later than 14 minutes. Before you were able to shred them super early, and they're just trying to put that timer off a little bit. And next, talking about a couple items. Soul Rebirth was removed. Rest in peace 2024 to 2024. Soul Rebirth will not be missed. What the removal of this item says to me is that Valve wants the game to end at a certain time. And Soul Rebirth was something that teams were getting en masse when the game is starting to scale up. And they really want it to be like, okay, there's an end time to the game. It's not going to infinitely go on. There's a finite closeout to the game. You don't just respawn for free. And they wanted to get rid of that. I could see this item coming back with a little bit of a rework, and maybe they're just collecting data to see how it affects the game length times. But for now, it's not in the game. We saw a really big Slowing Hex nerf. Slowing Hex, I think, was one of the most impactful high-value items in the last patch. And we saw some numbers tweaked for Slowing Hex, but the most important thing is that it's now going to be 500 souls more expensive because you need Enduring Spirit to get a Slowing Hex. And this is the first time that we're also seeing Enduring Spirit, a green item, a Vitality item, go and craft into a purple item, a Spirit item. And I'm all right with the idea of that happening in the future, to have like the mixture between categories to build things. But ultimately, this is going to make your Slowing Hexes more expensive, and you might want to look at some alternatives like a Cold Front or something like that to get the same job done. Lucky Shot was fixed to not cause proc effects to roll twice whenever it procced. So this is for heroes like Haze and Infernus, where Haze was getting double fixation stacks on Lucky Shot whenever it procced. And Lucky Shot on Infernus actually ignored the range that you were hitting them at, so you were setting people on fire much quicker with Lucky Shot. This has been patched out, and it is drastically affecting Haze. The next item change is Phantom Strike, which now grounds any flying targets on impact. This is an alternative to knockdown now. Now there's not just knockdown to get the flyers back on the ground, there's more options now, and Phantom Strike is one of them. Additionally, on the topic of flyers, Lash can also now kick flyers down as well. With his ground strike, he can actually bring them down to the ground along with Ivy from a previous patch. And also the Guardian lane change that we talked about before, where it's going to re-aggro if you attack a hero under a Guardian. That also is going to affect flyers as well. I think the Vindictas and the Grey Talons are going to have a harder time due to these changes, and we're going to see that in their win rates. All right, everybody, those are my patch insights. I hope you learned something about the new patch and you can win more games because of these insights and the perspective on the game. And I hope to see you in my live stream the next time that we go through all the patch notes one by one. If you want to get the full picture, make sure to follow on Twitch and sub here for next time. All right, everybody, have a good one.